Now, the talk title for today is, Can Love Really Save Us? Not unless we use it. And we here, I'm using the word we, let's say present company accepted. I mean, if you're here at this spiritual gathering, you've come a long way to embracing oneness and unity and cooperation and greater good. I mean, we as the public, the civil behavior of the masses, present company accepted, okay? Why is it that the last thing we consider is love after force, retaliation, blame, guilt tripping, punishing? Is our modus operandi, if all else fails, try love? And why do I put it in terms of being saved? Why indeed? Who ever thought that the year 2020 would be a media circus, a 3-ring circus, maybe more rings? I think that's funny. Instead of becoming more and more sophisticated, wise, maybe even cynical, public rhetoric has become more and more narrow-minded, simple-minded, and intolerant. And I'm not taking sides here. Both sides see the other sides that way politically. We did have a presidential candidate who ran on the platform of love, making love an organizing principle for governing policy. I think this person may get the Nobel Peace Prize. Marianne Williamson. Okay, back to being saved. Now, the mystic would say that there's nothing to be saved from, right? You realize that? And the absolutist, do you know what an absolutist is? Out at Unity Village, they'll say, are you an absolutist? And that's a person who understands that there are 2 domains of reality. The absolute domain and the relative domain where we actually live in the manifest world. And sometimes metaphysical students get the 2 domains mixed up, and they get domain poisoning. Yes. Okay, well, the absolutist would say that we occupy a realm of perfect mind energy already. And that's true. That's where we derive our power from. But I will quote the anthropologist and comparative historian Jared Diamond, who said in an interview, since the quarantine on YouTube, he says, quote, 200 years from now, people will look at us in the year 2020 and ask, why were they still debating the reality of climate change instead of doing something about it? Wasn't it obvious? Unquote. Yeah. If we were to adopt love as our practice, as our ethic, if we were to adopt love as our organizing principle, there could be no homeless children, no running the streets and begging all over the world. There could be no angry mobs destroying the property of people whom they have no reason or right to offend. So here's what we do, okay? Now this is where you need your magic wand. So I want you to go into that place in consciousness where you're in a trance state, where you're not in the time and space of your body in this room and the earth plane of soil and water, but you're in the imagination realm, where you can fly across the earth and see everything. And I want you to take your magic wand and fling the energy of love everywhere you can see in your imagination. Move across the plains. Move across the towns. Move across the cities, the waters, spreading the magic of love energy everywhere. Move over the mountains. Go across the Arctic ice cap. Move down through the plains of Siberia, all the wild animals running across the plain. Those beautiful wild beasts. Look into the waters and see the beautiful sea world fish, sea animals, sea life. Look across the lands and see the loving crops reaching up, offering us, the grapes offering us, here, have a drink. The trees offering us, here, have some oxygen. The clouds holding our moisture and protecting us from the sun's harsh radiation. And the earth itself, with its magnetic fields, blessing us with order and peace and harmony. And the weather moving across the atmosphere, cleansing, healing, moisturizing, harmonizing the lands. Our magic wand, we fling love all across everything. And it falls, that love energy sprinkling like diamonds, radiating like rainbow colors, slowly lands and penetrates into all the earth, all the people, all the lands, all the life forms, all the elements, earth, fire, water, and air, to penetrate and energize with love all of the earth. Now hold your magic wand to your heart and open your eyes. Now look what happened. People feel differently. They aren't angry. They aren't infirm. They aren't despairing. Indeed, love is the only thing that can save us. The one thing, the one idea, energy, the one practice, the one value that has the power to transform any condition into harmony and peace. I remember when I was in college, I read a book called Situation Ethics. Has anyone heard of this book? Okay. It is written by, got my glasses on, one of these, psychiatrists back in the day that was coming up with new ways of thinking and living. His name is Joseph Fletcher. It was published in 1966. Situation Ethics, this is a review of it, a manifesto of individual freedom and individual responsibility, elaborated within an ethic of love, which extricates modern man from rigid, archaic rules and codes. In other words, the ability to follow the spirit of the law and not the letter of the law. He goes on to say, rising above any creed, this renewed morality of loving concern is based on agape, the love which every man must endeavor to emulate. Agape, the New Thought Center in California, in Los Angeles, is called the Agape Center. Agape is a Greek idea of love that is above personal love, above romantic love, above love of objects, but a fellowship love that is a love of all people equally. So this Situation Ethics book was a very strong influence in the 60s to wake people up to their to the choices that they make, so that they don't just follow some code like we do oftentimes in the justice system and come out with an absurd answer that doesn't really address the problem, but that takes into consideration, do the loving thing. Do the loving thing in every situation. And that's what the word situation ethics means. And I must say, I adopted that and I internalized that, and it's been a great, valuable idea in my life. Do the loving thing. Find the loving choice in every situation and in every moment. So, that means we have to go to love first, right? Like I was saying, love first. So I want you to think of an object. Maybe you don't have one yet, but you're going to find one. Some little talisman that you select, that you assign to remind you to choose love first. That just represents love first. And put it, in your viewing, in your environment, so that it reminds you constantly, every time your eyes rest on it, you hear the words love first. Pick an object in your house, in the free room, or a thrift shop, or whatever. Something that you already have, something you're about to acquire. It doesn't matter. It just is a special thing that touches your heart. And then if you can, without disfiguring it, I would say put a label on it that says love first. And let's develop this idea that we can make bookmarks that say love first, bumper stickers that say love first, signs of in the people's lawns that say love first with some pleasing design on it. So let your talisman speak to you to remember love first. Now, do you see the picture on the front of the program folder? Do you recognize what that's a picture of? Yes, the Good Samaritan. The Good Samaritan is a parable that has lasted 2,000 years. It is one of the eminent parables of all time. And I'm going to read it today. I love reading the Bible. If anyone wants to volunteer to be a Bible reader, I'll consider it, but I don't want to give up reading it myself. No, you can read the Bible too. Okay. Now, this is in all three of the synoptic Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, but I'm reading the Luke version from chapter 10, where he is teaching the disciples, and there's some students. It's not a big crowd, but it's people who are especially seeking him and truly trying to understand what his message is. Okay. Just then a lawyer stood up to test Jesus. "Teacher," he said, "what must I do to inherit eternal life?" And Jesus said to him, "What is written in the law? What do you read there?" The lawyer said, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself." And he said to him, "You have given the right answer. Do this and you will live." But, wanting to justify himself, the young man asked Jesus, "And who is my neighbor?" Jesus replied, "A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho and fell into the hands of robbers, who stripped him, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. Now, by chance, a priest was going down that road, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. So likewise a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, while traveling, came near him, and when he saw him, he was moved with pity. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, having poured oil and wine on them. Then he put him on his own animal, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii, gave them to the innkeeper, and said, 'Take care of him, and when I come back I will repay you whatever more you spend.' Which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers?" And the man said, "The one who showed him mercy." Jesus said to him, "Go and do likewise." Go and do likewise. So who is my neighbor? Who is your neighbor? Everyone. Now I got a story to tell you. About how love moved through me over time in making decisions that governed how I proceeded. Okay. So, my father was born in a little town in Tennessee called Dresden. And every summer we used to go down there and visit when I was a kid. So I was about in the fourth grade. The summer of the fourth grade, we were down in Dresden, Tennessee. And one of my uncles, who actually was a lawyer and a state senator, he comes in with a great big old saddlebag, and he says, I found this saddlebag in somebody's basement we were cleaning out, and it's been through water, and it's got a lot of old papers in it. Here, you kids can just have it and play with it. Maybe you can play store or something. So he gave each one of us a chunk of old parchment papers that had been through floods and were tarnished around the edges, And I love that kind of stuff. When I was a kid, I considered it very precious. And I was afraid if I opened those papers, they would break and tear. And so I didn't touch them. And I put them in my suitcase and I took them home. And that winter, I came across them in my closet and I decided to very carefully open them up and see what they were. And among other things, there were 8 bills of sale for Negro slaves. And there I sat in the 5th grade as a 9-year-old child, reading on a piece of paper dated 1843. Be it known by all those present that I have this day signed, sealed, and delivered one Negro slave named James, age about 8. I warrant this slave to be sound and healthy in mind and body, and a slave for life. And I felt that. To the core of my being, I felt it. For the first time, I realized what damage, what hurt had been caused to these people who had been kidnapped and sold as objects for cheap labor, and then continued to be sold as objects and broken away from their families and their loved ones. There was a bill of sale for a girl, Ruby, age 18, and her baby. There was a bill of sale for a man, I forget his name, about 28, for $500. In those days, $500 was like $25,000 now or more. So from then on, those bills of sale became the most precious thing I owned. And I always knew where they were. I just loved them because they showed me what it felt, what was the damage that was done, what was the extent of the hurt that was caused by slavery. I really got it, And those papers, they were the symbol of what had revealed it to me. So fast forward, I'm in ministerial school years later in Kansas City, and I have those bills of sale of Negro slaves, thinking, well, if I ever get really down and out, I can take them to a museum and sell them, and it'll spare me from disaster, right? And then I took a course in my ministerial school called Power and Privilege, in which it was demonstrated how we're born with certain eventualities in our lives that give us advantage over other people that don't have these things. Some do and some don't, and it's not an even playing field. And it sensitized me to that. I got really sensitized to how uneven things are in society and how we tend to take our advantage for granted. And so the next time I came across those documents, those parchment documents that I considered to be my nest egg, my golden egg that would spare me from poverty, I realized that I was not capable to profit from the abomination of slavery yet again. I couldn't do it. I realized I would never be able to do that. So now what am I going to do with these? I just put that aside, gave it to God. Well, a few months later, I was at the Veterans Hospital in Kansas City with a friend of mine who was there to find out what his death benefits were. He was the soloist at Unity Temple on the Plaza, and he was a veteran. A very beautiful, lovely man, had a gorgeous voice. So he was very elderly and disabled, and I'd taken him to the hospital so he could check on the death benefits at the veterans at the VA hospital, which was where you go to find out. So we were in the cafeteria downstairs. We were checking through the line, and then we went to sit down, and I heard the cashier say, "That's not enough money for your tray, sir. You're going to have to put it back." And I just went up there and I said, "We'll cover it. What is it?" And it was this African American man who was about like in his 50s, kind of small. And I said, "Why don't you sit with us?" He sat with us. He said, "You know, I'm a veteran of Vietnam, and I'm homeless right now, and I just came by to see if they had anything for me here." And I said, "You know, um, here's my card. I want you to call me when you get settled. And I have some bills of sale for Negro slaves, and I want to give them to you for you to use to get a new start with." He said, "Okay." So he did call me about 2 months later. He said, "You know, I got a place. I'm in such and such neighborhood in Kansas City, and you know, you can let me have those things now because I think I could use them well." So I brought them to his house and I gave them to him. And he contacted me about 6 weeks later, and he called me Miss Diane. I said, "You shouldn't call me Miss Diane. You should call me Diane." Uh, he said, "I decided not to sell those. I decided to use them to form a neighborhood club of young men who are motivated to rise up and rise above their past and really come to terms with what it is. And it's going very well. Lots of young men are coming to my house every week for a support group to recognize who they really are." And that's the end of that story. Thank you. That was love in action, going on and on. And that's what we all are committed to. I know we are. We are all in that organizing principle of finding the loving thing to choose to do. So let us foresee a future of ourselves in open-hearted willingness for the greater good, for the blessing of cooperation, harmony, and abundance. And as the Fillmores, this is one of the oldest affirmations in unity: let liberty, justice, righteousness, and peace be established throughout the world through the power of divine love, through the power of the all-pervasive consciousness of infinite being, God. Amen. Thank you. Well, our statement for meditation today, as you can find on your program folder, is love is revealed within me at every level in the silence. It's so wonderful to know that we have the capacity to experience a revelation of love. It's a feeling, it's an energy, it's a light, it's a purpose, it's a guidance, it's an ethic, it's God. And so let's take that statement into our souls now. Love is revealed within me at every level in the silence. And as we go within, as we travel through the mists of consciousness, we dismiss the doings of the moment. We allow our hearts to thrill with the energy of love. We allow our bodies to quicken to the healing of love. And in this awareness, in this state, we now commune with the divine in the silence. The magnificence and glory of love fills us, lifts us, and we are made whole. We are free. We are joyous. And we are truly compassionate, loving, and filled with peace. And so it is. Amen.